The morning of October 15, 1944, aboard the Japanese submarine I-368, Lieutenant Commander Yukio Sato raised his periscope through the waters off Ulithi Atoll. What he observed would fundamentally challenge every assumption the Imperial Japanese Navy had made about American naval capabilities. Through the lens, he counted not just warships at anchor, but something that defied comprehension. Massive floating structures that appeared to be entire machine shops operating at sea. The carrier USS Franklin sat cradled in one of these floating behemoths, her flight deck swarming with workers and equipment. Steam rose from welding operations. Cranes moved heavy machinery. The Americans had brought their industrial heartland to the front lines. In his coded transmission that night, Sato wrote words that would shake the Japanese Naval General Staff. Enemy possesses floating factories capable of major carrier reconstruction. Ship repair capabilities exceed all previous intelligence estimates. What Lieutenant Commander Sato had witnessed were floating machine shops, specialized vessels that represented American industrial innovation at its most audacious. These weren't merely repair ships. They were complete manufacturing facilities that could rebuild aircraft carriers from the waterline up while operating thousands of miles from any permanent base. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. 3 months before Pearl Harbor, in the conference rooms of the Japanese Naval General Staff in Tokyo, Admiral Osami Nagano had presented calculations that seemed unassailable. American aircraft carriers represented the primary threat to Japanese expansion, but they possessed a critical vulnerability: complexity. The Yorktown-class carriers contained over 2 million individual parts. Their steam turbines required specialized metallurgy. Their flight deck elevators demanded precision engineering found only in major shipyards. Commander Minoru Genda, architect of the Pearl Harbor attack plan, had studied American carrier construction extensively. His intelligence files detailed every major naval facility on the American Pacific coast. Mare Island Naval Shipyard in California could handle 2 carriers simultaneously for major repairs. Puget Sound Naval Shipyard in Washington possessed facilities for perhaps 3 carriers. Pearl Harbor, the closest major facility to the combat zone, could manage emergency repairs on 4 carriers at most. The mathematics appeared favorable to Japanese planners. If kamikaze attacks and naval aviation could damage 6 to 8 American carriers in the first year of war, repair bottlenecks would cripple American naval aviation for months. Carriers would need to steam 3,000 miles back to the west coast for major repairs, removing them from combat for 4 to 6 months per vessel. The Pacific's vast distances would work in Japan's favor. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, despite his reservations about war with America, had endorsed these estimates. His chief of staff, Rear Admiral Ryunosuke Kusaka, presented detailed charts showing American industrial limitations. While America could build carriers faster than Japan, carrier operations required more than hulls and engines. They demanded the specialized machine shops, precision tooling, and skilled technicians found only in established naval yards. They had not imagined that Americans would simply build these naval yards and deploy them to the battle zone. The concept of floating machine shops emerged from American recognition that modern naval warfare would be fought across distances that made traditional repair facilities obsolete. In 1941, the Bureau of Ships initiated studies on mobile industrial capability. Captain Samuel Robinson, head of the Ship Design Division, proposed something unprecedented: ships designed not to fight, but to rebuild those that did fight. The specifications seemed impossible. These floating machine shops would need to manufacture replacement parts ranging from aircraft engines to gun barrels. They required foundries capable of casting propeller shafts, machine shops with tolerances measured in thousandths of inches, and electrical systems that could rewire an entire carrier. Most critically, they needed to operate independently for months without resupply from American industrial centers. The first floating machine shop, USS Vulcan, commissioned in June 1941, represented American engineering at its most ambitious. At 625 feet long and displacing 16,200 tons, Vulcan carried more machine tools than some entire factories. Her workshops contained lathes capable of turning shafts 40 feet long, presses that could forge anchor chains, and electrical shops that could rewind the massive motors that powered carrier elevators. Vulcan's complement of 1,400 men included master machinists, electrical engineers, metallurgists, and specialists in every trade required for naval construction. These weren't ordinary sailors. They were industrial craftsmen who had learned their trades in Detroit's automotive plants, Pittsburgh's steel mills, and America's great shipbuilding centers. Commander James Morrison, Vulcan's first commanding officer, described her mission in his post-war memoir. "We were to be Detroit, and Pittsburgh made mobile, capable of rebuilding anything the Navy could float." The reality would exceed even these ambitious goals. The Japanese first encountered floating machine shop capabilities during the Guadalcanal campaign, though they initially failed to comprehend what they were witnessing. On October 13, 1942, Japanese battleships Kongo and Haruna had bombarded Henderson Field, achieving what appeared to be decisive damage to American naval aviation. Reconnaissance flights confirmed the destruction of numerous aircraft and facilities. 3 days later, Japanese pilots reported massive American air activity from the same base. Intelligence officers dismissed these reports as pilot error or wishful thinking. How could the Americans have rebuilt their air capabilities so quickly? The answer lay offshore, where USS Vulcan operated in conjunction with destroyer tender USS Whitney. Vulcan's machine shops had worked continuously for 72 hours, manufacturing replacement parts for damaged aircraft. Her foundries cast new engine blocks, her electrical shops rewound burned-out motors, her precision machinists fabricated control surfaces and landing gear components. What would have required weeks in a stationary facility, Vulcan accomplished in days while anchored in contested waters. Captain Tadashi Nakajima, commanding the Japanese carrier Shokaku, first encountered American floating machine shop capabilities firsthand during the Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands on October 26, 1942. His aircraft had successfully damaged the carrier USS Enterprise with multiple bomb hits, creating what appeared to be mission-killing damage to her flight deck and elevator systems. Japanese intelligence calculated 6 months minimum for Enterprise to return to operational status, AMA, if she survived the return voyage to Pearl Harbor. Standard doctrine suggested that elevator damage required dry dock facilities and specialized lifting equipment, available only at major naval bases. The Japanese had written Enterprise off as eliminated from the war. 28 days later, Enterprise reappeared in combat during the naval battle of Guadalcanal. Her elevators functioned perfectly. Her flight deck showed no signs of previous damage. Nakajima's post-war interrogation revealed his confusion. "We confirmed severe structural damage to Enterprise. Our intelligence indicated impossible repair timeline, yet she returned to battle stronger than before the attack." The transformation had occurred at Noumea, where USS Vulcan had performed what amounted to a complete reconstruction of Enterprise's damaged sections. Vulcan's crews had fabricated entirely new elevator machinery, replaced damaged flight deck sections, and upgraded systems beyond their original specifications. The repair took place not in a permanent dry dock, but in an open anchorage, while Vulcan's gunners maintained anti-aircraft watches. Chief Machinist's mate Robert Patterson, who supervised the Enterprise elevator repairs, later described the complexity. "We essentially built a new elevator system from raw steel, cast the gears, machined the reduction units, wound the motors. Everything except the basic steel structure was manufactured aboard Vulcan, using tools and equipment we carried with us." By early 1943, the Japanese Naval General Staff began receiving intelligence reports that challenged their fundamental assumptions about American repair capabilities. Submarine reconnaissance and prisoner interrogations revealed American ships returning to combat far sooner than Japanese calculations predicted. Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, hero of Pearl Harbor, reviewed these reports with growing alarm. A damaged American cruiser observed at Espiritu Santo had returned to combat in 3 weeks. A destroyer with her bow blown off reappeared in 2 weeks with what appeared to be an entirely new forward section. Most disturbing, carriers suffering what should have been months-long repairs were returning to combat in weeks. Traditional intelligence analysis could not explain these observations. The breakthrough in understanding came from Lieutenant Commander Yahachi Tanabe, commanding submarine I-168. On reconnaissance near Espiritu Santo in March 1943, Tanabe observed something extraordinary through his periscope. The damaged cruiser USS New Orleans, which had lost her entire bow section to a Japanese torpedo at Tassafaronga, was being rebuilt by what appeared to be a floating factory. Tanabe's detailed observation report described USS Vestal, a floating machine shop specifically designed for heavy cruiser repairs. Vestal's crews were manufacturing an entirely new bow section for New Orleans, complete with rebuilt compartments, weapons mounts, and crew facilities. The work proceeded with industrial precision and speed that challenged everything Japanese naval doctrine understood about ship repair. The enemy vessel appeared to be constructing rather than repairing the damaged cruiser, Tanabe reported. Multiple cranes operated simultaneously. Welding proceeded on 3 levels. The damaged ship was being rebuilt rather than merely patched. His report reached Admiral Yamamoto's headquarters within days, forcing a fundamental reassessment of American capabilities. USS Vestal represented the evolution of floating machine shop technology. Originally designed as a collier, she had been converted into what amounted to a complete naval shipyard capable of independent operation. Her machine shops could fabricate everything from propeller shafts to gun mounts. Her electrical shops possessed the capability to rewire an entire cruiser. Her foundries could cast replacement armor plating. Most remarkably, Vestal carried the templates and technical drawings necessary to rebuild major warships without reference to shore-based engineering departments. Her technical library contained detailed construction plans for every major class of American warship. Her metallurgy laboratory could analyze damaged components and specify replacement materials. She was, in effect, a floating repository of American naval engineering knowledge. The psychological impact on Japanese naval personnel who witnessed these capabilities was profound. Commander Mitsuo Fuchida, who had led the Pearl Harbor attack, encountered floating machine shop operations during his recovery from injuries sustained at Midway. His memoir describes watching American repair operations at an undisclosed location in late 1943. I observed the enemy repairing battle damage with methods and speed that seemed impossible, Fuchida wrote. A destroyer with her entire superstructure destroyed was being rebuilt with completely new construction. The Americans were not merely repairing their ships, they were improving them during the repair process. Each damaged vessel returned to combat stronger than before. This observation highlighted a crucial advantage of floating machine shop operations. Unlike emergency repairs that simply restored minimal functionality, American floating machine shops performed complete reconstructions that often improved upon original designs. Damaged radar systems were replaced with upgraded models. Worn machinery was rebuilt to higher specifications. Battle damage became an opportunity for enhancement rather than merely restoration. By mid-1943, American floating machine shops had established a network of mobile industrial capability across the Pacific. USS Vulcan operated in the Southwest Pacific, supporting operations from Guadalcanal to the Philippines. USS Vestal serviced the Central Pacific Campaign, moving from base to base as operations advanced. USS Ajax provided specialized submarine repair capabilities, while USS Hector focused on destroyer and escort vessel maintenance. Each floating machine shop represented the equivalent of a major shore-based facility, but with crucial advantages. They could relocate as operations advanced, maintaining close proximity to combat zones. They were immune to land-based attack, operating in anchorages protected by the fleet they served. Most importantly, they brought American industrial capability directly to the point where it was needed most. The Japanese response revealed their growing awareness of this capability's strategic significance. Beginning in late 1943, Japanese submarines received priority orders to target floating machine shops rather than combat vessels. The reasoning was strategic. Sinking a floating machine shop would eliminate repair capability equivalent to destroying multiple warships. These attacks generally failed due to the heavy defensive screens that protected floating machine shops. USS Vulcan survived 17 submarine attacks between 1943 and 1945. Her defensive armament, including multiple 5-inch guns and numerous anti-aircraft weapons, combined with escort destroyer screens to create nearly impenetrable protection. The few successful attacks confirmed Japanese understanding of these vessels' importance. When submarine I-26 damaged USS Vestal with a torpedo hit in January 1944, the American response was immediate and massive. Every available vessel participated in hunting I-26, which was subsequently destroyed with all hands. The protection of floating machine shops had become a fleet priority. As American forces advanced across the Central Pacific in 1944, floating machine shops enabled operational tempo that Japanese defenders found impossible to counter. The rapid capture and development of island bases was supported by floating machine shops that arrived with the invasion fleets, ready to begin major repair operations immediately upon establishing secure anchorages. At Majuro, USS Ajax arrived with the invasion fleet and immediately began overhauling destroyers damaged in previous operations. At Eniwetok, USS Hector established complete submarine repair facilities within days of the island's capture. These rapid deployments meant that advancing American forces maintained full operational capability without the delays traditionally associated with establishing shore-based facilities. The strategic multiplication effect was enormous. Instead of damaged vessels retiring to Pearl Harbor or the West Coast for repairs, requiring months of transit time, they could be fully restored within the combat zone in weeks. This effectively tripled or quadrupled the operational availability of the American fleet, creating a mathematical advantage that Japanese forces could not overcome through tactical excellence alone. Admiral Chester Nimitz recognized the strategic revolution that floating machine shops represented. In a directive to all Pacific Fleet commanders dated July 15, 1944, Nimitz wrote, "Floating machine shops have fundamentally altered the correlation of forces in the Pacific. Our ability to maintain full operational capability within the combat zone provides a decisive advantage that must be protected and exploited to the maximum extent." The Japanese understanding of this strategic shift is evident in their changing tactical priorities. By late 1944, Japanese battle plans specifically included provisions for attacking American auxiliary vessels, particularly floating machine shops. The desperation behind these orders reflected Japanese recognition that conventional attacks on combat vessels could not achieve decisive results when those vessels could be rapidly restored to full capability. Captain Rikihei Inaguchi, senior staff officer to Admiral Takejiro Onishi, creator of the Kamikaze Corps, provided post-war testimony about Japanese awareness of American floating machine shop capabilities. "We calculated that successful kamikaze attacks would remove American carriers from combat for months," Inaguchi stated. "Instead, we observed these same carriers returning to battle within weeks, often with improved capabilities. The enemy's floating repair facilities had made our entire strategic calculation invalid." The floating machine shop's impact extended beyond mere repair capabilities. They served as technological transfer mechanisms, bringing the latest American industrial innovations directly to combat zones. New radar systems, improved aircraft engines, and upgraded weapons systems reached the fleet through floating machine shops months before they would have been available through normal supply channels. USS Vulcan's post-war technical reports reveal the scope of this technological advancement. Between 1943 and 1945, Vulcan's shops manufactured over 12,000 major components, from aircraft engines to gun barrel assemblies. Her metallurgy laboratory developed improved alloys specifically for Pacific operations. Her electrical shops designed enhanced radar systems optimized for tropical conditions. This innovation under combat conditions represented something unprecedented in naval history. Traditional naval operations separated research and development from operational deployment by months or years. Floating machine shops collapsed this timeline, allowing immediate implementation of technological improvements based on combat experience. The Japanese naval aviation's encounter with constantly improving American aircraft exemplified this challenge. Japanese pilots reported that American fighters seemed to improve in performance between engagements. What they were observing was the real-time implementation of modifications developed aboard floating machine shops based on previous combat reports. USS Vulcan's aircraft engine shop provides a specific example. After analyzing battle damage to F-6F Hellcat engines, Vulcan's engineers developed improved cooling systems that increased engine reliability in tropical conditions. These modifications were implemented on dozens of aircraft within days of their development, giving American pilots immediate advantages in subsequent engagements. By 1945, the network of American floating machine shops had created what amounted to a mobile industrial base that moved with the advancing fleet. As American forces prepared for the invasion of Japan, floating machine shops were positioning themselves to support operations in Japanese home waters, bringing American industrial capability to the very doorstep of the Japanese homeland. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. The most devastating demonstration of floating machine shop capabilities occurred during the carrier raids on the Japanese home islands in February 1945. Task Force 58, commanded by Vice Admiral Mark Mitcher, launched massive strikes against aircraft factories and naval installations around Tokyo. Japanese kamikaze counterattacks achieved significant hits on several American carriers, including USS Saratoga and USS Franklin. Under traditional naval doctrine, these heavily damaged carriers would have required immediate withdrawal to Pearl Harbor or the West Coast for months of repairs. Instead, they sailed to Ulithi Atoll, where the most sophisticated floating machine shop operation of the war awaited them. What the Japanese observed there would shatter their remaining illusions about American industrial capability. USS Vulcan had been joined by 3 additional floating machine shops: USS Ajax, USS Hector, and the newly arrived USS Prometheus. Together, they represented more manufacturing capability than existed in some entire nations. The technical specifications of this floating industrial complex were staggering: 47 major machine tools, 6 foundries, electrical shops capable of rewinding motors weighing 20 tons, and metallurgy laboratories that could analyze and duplicate any known alloy. Captain Minoru Yokoi, commanding the submarine I-401, managed to penetrate Ulithi's defenses in March 1945. His periscope observations, transmitted to Tokyo before his submarine was detected and destroyed, provided Japanese intelligence with the first detailed assessment of American floating machine shop operations. Yokoi's final transmission read, "Multiple large vessels conducting industrial operations on damaged carriers. Observed complete reconstruction of flight deck sections. Enemy possesses mobile shipyard capability exceeding our largest permanent facilities." The carrier USS Franklin presented the ultimate test of floating machine shop capabilities. Hit by 2 500-pound bombs during strikes on Kyushu on March 19, 1945, Franklin suffered the most severe damage of any American carrier to survive the war. 807 sailors were killed or missing. Her flight deck was gutted. Her hangar deck was a twisted mass of metal. By every traditional measure, Franklin was a total loss. Yet USS Prometheus, the most advanced floating machine shop ever built, took on the challenge of rebuilding Franklin from the waterline up. Prometheus displaced 21,000 tons and carried a crew of 1,800 specialists. Her shops contained lathes capable of turning propeller shafts, presses that could reshape aircraft carrier deck plating, and electrical facilities that could rewire an entire ship's nervous system. Master Chief Petty Officer William Hennessy, who supervised Franklin's reconstruction, later testified to a congressional committee about the scope of the work. "We essentially built a new carrier inside the hull of the old one. New flight deck, new elevators, new electrical systems, new machinery spaces. Everything except the basic hull structure was manufactured aboard Prometheus using materials and equipment we carried with us." The rebuilding of Franklin took 11 weeks, a timeline that would have challenged major shore installations with unlimited resources. Prometheus accomplished this feat while anchored in an open lagoon, maintaining constant anti-aircraft watches and supporting repair operations on dozens of other vessels simultaneously. The technical achievement represented something unprecedented in naval history. Japanese intelligence officers analyzing reconnaissance photographs of Ulithi could not initially believe what they observed. The carrier that had limped into the anchorage as a smoking wreck emerged 11 weeks later, with obvious improvements over her original design. New radar systems, upgraded anti-aircraft armament, and enhanced aircraft handling equipment made the rebuilt Franklin superior to her pre-battle configuration. Admiral Soemu Toyoda, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet, received these intelligence reports with the understanding that Japan faced something beyond conventional military opposition. His staff analysis, preserved in captured documents, concluded, "The enemy's floating repair capabilities represent industrial organization on a scale that cannot be countered through conventional naval operations. They have brought their homeland's manufacturing capacity to our waters." The strategic implications extended far beyond individual ship repairs. Floating machine shops enabled American forces to maintain operational tempo that Japanese defenders found impossible to match. During the Okinawa campaign, which began on April 1, 1945, American naval forces absorbed unprecedented kamikaze attacks while maintaining full operational capability through continuous floating machine shop support. USS Bunker Hill, hit by 2 kamikaze aircraft on May 11, suffered damage that would normally require 6 months of shore-based repairs. USS Prometheus restored her to full operational status in 4 weeks while anchored off Karama Reto. USS Enterprise, damaged by kamikaze attack on May 14, was repaired and returned to combat in 3 weeks. The mathematical advantage this provided was overwhelming. Captain Rikihei Inaguchi, analyzing kamikaze effectiveness for Admiral Onishi, calculated that successful attacks removed American carriers from combat for an average of 21 days rather than the projected 6 months. Our entire strategic concept was based on cumulative damage, overwhelming American repair capabilities, Inaguchi wrote in his post-war analysis. The enemy's floating machine shops made our calculations meaningless. The technical sophistication of floating machine shop operations exceeded anything in Japanese experience. USS Vulcan's metallurgy laboratory developed specialized alloys for Pacific operations, including corrosion-resistant steel that performed better than original specifications. Her electrical shops designed radar systems optimized for tropical conditions. Her machine shops manufactured precision components with tolerances measured in thousandths of inches. Chief Metallurgist Dr. Robert Steinberg, serving aboard USS Prometheus, described the innovation process. "We weren't just repairing battle damage, we were continuously improving American naval technology based on combat experience. Every repair incorporated lessons learned from previous engagements. Our ships returned to battle better than they had left." This real-time technological development represented a decisive advantage that Japanese forces could not match. Their repair facilities, concentrated in the home islands, were increasingly isolated from combat zones by American submarine warfare and air attacks. Japanese ships damaged in battle faced month-long voyages to reach repair facilities that lacked the advanced equipment and specialized materials available aboard American floating machine shops. The contrast in repair philosophies reflected deeper cultural and industrial differences. Japanese naval tradition emphasized spiritual resilience and making do with available resources. Battle damage was accepted as inevitable, and repairs focused on restoring minimal functionality rather than improvement. American industrial culture approached battle damage as an engineering problem to be solved through superior technology and organization. USS Ajax exemplified this philosophical difference during her work on the battleship USS Pennsylvania, damaged by torpedo attack during the Okinawa campaign. Rather than simply patching the torpedo hole, Ajax's engineers completely redesigned Pennsylvania's underwater protection system, incorporating lessons learned from previous torpedo attacks. The rebuilt battleship emerged with improved survivability against submarine attack. The scale of floating machine shop operations grew continuously throughout 1945. By the war's end, 7 major floating machine shops operated in the Pacific, supported by dozens of smaller repair vessels and tenders. Their combined manufacturing capability exceeded that of many pre-war shipbuilding nations. They had performed over 3,000 major repairs and manufactured more than 40,000 precision components. Japanese naval intelligence attempts to target floating machine shops revealed their strategic importance. Special submarine squadrons received orders to attack these vessels in preference to combat ships. The reasoning was mathematical. Destroying one floating machine shop eliminated repair capability equivalent to sinking multiple warships. These attacks generally failed due to the massive defensive screens protecting floating machine shops. When submarine I-58 managed to torpedo USS Indianapolis in July 1945, the immediate American response focused on protecting floating machine shops rather than hunting the submarine. Every available destroyer was positioned to screen USS Vulcan and USS Prometheus, demonstrating that floating machine shops had become more strategically valuable than individual combat vessels. The psychological impact on Japanese naval personnel of witnessing American floating machine shop capabilities was profound and demoralizing. Commander Mitsuo Fuchida, in his post-war memoir, described the effect on Japanese morale. "We realized we were fighting not just the American Navy, but the entire American industrial system made portable. Every damaged American ship would return stronger than before, while our damaged vessels often never returned at all." This demoralization extended to the highest levels of Japanese command. Admiral Toyoda's final strategic assessment, written in July 1945, acknowledged the hopelessness of Japan's position. "The enemy's floating machine shops have made time and distance irrelevant. They repair ships faster than we can damage them. They bring their industrial superiority directly to our waters. Continuation of hostilities serves no strategic purpose." The technical achievements of floating machine shops during the Pacific War established principles that would influence naval operations for decades. The ability to maintain complex weapons systems far from industrial bases, the integration of combat and support functions, and the real-time implementation of technological improvements all became standard features of modern naval operations. Master Chief Petty Officer Thomas Rodriguez, who served aboard 3 different floating machine shops during the war, captured their significance in his memoir. "We weren't just fixing ships, we were proving that American industry could go anywhere and do anything. Every repair was a demonstration that distance and geography meant nothing when you had the right tools and the right people." The Japanese recognition of floating machine shop capabilities' decisive impact is evident. Emperor Hirohito's surrender announcement on August 15, 1945. While the atomic bombs provided the immediate catalyst for surrender, the emperor's reference to the war situation having developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage encompassed the cumulative effect of American industrial superiority, of which floating machine shops were a prime example. Admiral Toyoda's post-war interrogation provided the most direct Japanese assessment of floating machine shop impact. "Your floating machine shops defeated us as surely as your submarines and aircraft. We could damage your fleet, but you could repair it faster than we could attack it. You brought your entire industrial system to our waters. Against such capability, traditional naval warfare became obsolete." The legacy of World War II floating machine shops extends far beyond their immediate wartime impact. They demonstrated that industrial capability could be made mobile and projected across vast distances. Modern naval operations continue to rely on mobile repair and manufacturing capabilities developed during the Pacific War. The principles pioneered by ships like USS Vulcan and USS Prometheus remain central to naval logistics today. The story of Japanese encounters with American floating machine shops represents one of the most decisive yet underappreciated factors in the Pacific War's outcome. While battles and campaigns receive historical attention, the quiet work of floating machine shops, rebuilding damaged vessels, improving technology, and maintaining operational tempo, proved equally decisive in determining the war's outcome. For Japanese naval officers who witnessed these capabilities, floating machine shops represented something beyond conventional military opposition. They embodied American industrial civilization made mobile, bringing manufacturing capability directly to the point of conflict. Against such industrial might, traditional military virtues alone could not prevail. The Pacific War became a contest not just of fleets and air forces, but of industrial systems, ESA. And in that contest, America's floating machine shops provided the decisive advantage. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.